Everyone agrees you should sell the house and give the money to your sister's baby fund. She needs it more." My mother said it with a smile, wine glass raised like she was making a heartfelt toast instead of dismantling her daughter's life in front of an audience. The dining room went quiet for half a second, then came the nods. My father leaned back in his chair with that satisfied expression he always wore when I did what the family expected. My cousins exchanged approving glances. My sister covered her mouth dramatically, whispering, "This means everything to us." I sat there staring at them, listening to forks scrape plates while they discussed my future like I wasn't even in the room. Not one person asked what I wanted. Not one person asked what that house meant to me, because to them, I was never the daughter with dreams. I was the dependable one, the fixer, the sacrifice, the child who always gave. So I smiled softly, reached into my purse, and unlocked my phone. Then I read the message out loud. "Property transfer finalized. Funds secured under irrevocable trust. Sole owner, Indigo Ray Whitman." Silence crashed across the table. No clinking glasses, no fake tears, no speeches about family, just shock. My sister's face lost color first. "What do you mean, transfer finalized?" I looked at her calmly. "I sold the house." The room erupted all at once. "You what?" my father barked. "You can't be serious," my mother snapped. But I was calmer than I'd ever been in my life, because for the first time, I wasn't asking permission to protect myself. The house had never been just a house. It was every overtime shift I worked at 23, every second job, every skipped vacation. Every night I ate instant noodles while quietly saving for a future nobody believed I could build. When I bought that little fixer-upper in the bad neighborhood, my family laughed openly. My brother Ezra called it a depressing starter home. My mother asked why I couldn't just marry someone successful instead, but I bought it anyway. And over the years, I turned that little house into something beautiful, not expensive, not flashy, safe, mine. That's why hearing them casually volunteer it for my sister's baby fund felt less like a request and more like betrayal, especially because my sister already had everything: the attention, the praise, the financial support. She had always been the golden child, and I had always been the backup plan. "You're overreacting," my father said sharply that night. This was about helping family. I laughed softly. "No," I replied. "This was about deciding what I should sacrifice next." My cousin Amelia leaned forward. "Indigo, she's having a baby. Priorities change." I nodded slowly. "You're right. Mine did too." Then I pulled a second envelope from my purse and slid it across the table. My mother opened it and went pale. Inside was formal documentation withdrawing my $60,000 contribution from the family investment account they'd pressured me into years ago. The same account everyone benefited from, the same one funded mostly by me. "You can't do this," my father whispered. I already did. And suddenly the entire table looked terrified. Not because they cared about me, because they realized access to me was disappearing. That night, my phone exploded with calls, voicemails, texts, demands, my sister crying, my mother guilt-tripping, my father furious. But I didn't answer. Instead, I drove home to the little restaurant I'd quietly spent 2 years building behind everyone's backs. They never took it seriously. To them, it was just another one of Indigo's creative phases. What they didn't know was that the restaurant was already profitable, booked weeks in advance, built entirely without their help. And standing alone in that warm kitchen, smelling garlic, lemon, and fresh bread in the air, I realized something. The life they dismissed was already saving me. Monday morning brought the real storm. The family holding account had frozen, legally. Years earlier, while helping clean up my parents' financial messes, I'd consolidated several shared assets into one protected account under my name for tax purposes. Nobody paid attention to the paperwork. They assumed I'd always stay obedient. But after that dinner, I made one call, one signature, and suddenly nobody could access funds they'd relied on for years. My mother called screaming, "Your father's cards were declined." Ezra's condo payment bounced. My aunt sent paragraphs about loyalty. My sister accused me of ruining her pregnancy experience. Still, I stayed quiet, because silence forces people to hear themselves. The first person who came to my house was my sister. She stood outside my front door with swollen eyes and trembling hands. "Please," she whispered through the wood. "Mom didn't mean it like that." I didn't answer. Not because I hated her, because for once, I wanted her to sit with discomfort instead of handing it back to me. The next morning, my mother arrived. Pearls, designer sunglasses, anger wrapped in perfume. She carried an old photo album like it was proof of love. Inside were pictures from my childhood, school plays, birthdays, graduations, and suddenly I noticed something I'd never fully seen before. In nearly every photo, I was standing alone. Mom pointed at one picture softly. "You were loved." I looked at the faded image of 12-year-old me holding a spelling bee trophy while everyone else crowded around Ezra. Then I closed the album carefully. "Maybe," I said quietly, "but I was never chosen." That finally silenced her. A few days later, Ezra called. The golden son, the favorite, the one who once told me, "You're good at staying invisible." Now his voice shook. "Why are you doing this?" I stared across my restaurant dining room at the tables I built myself. "You mean why I stopped funding everyone else's life? That's not fair." I almost laughed. Fair. There was that word again. Was it fair when my business plans were mocked for years? Was it fair when my savings became family resources whenever someone else needed money? Was it fair that my dreams only mattered after they became successful? "I spent most of my life trying to earn a seat at your table," I said calmly. "Now I'm building my own." He didn't know how to answer that, because people who benefit from your silence rarely know what to do once you stop apologizing for existing. Over the next few weeks, I quietly untangled my life from theirs. Joint accounts closed, shared investments removed, emergency contacts updated, not dramatically, carefully, peacefully. At the same time, my restaurant began taking off in ways I never expected. A local food blogger featured us online, then a city magazine called us one of the hidden gems of the neighborhood. Reservations tripled, customers started leaving handwritten notes behind after dinner. One woman wrote, "Thank you for creating a place that feels warm enough to heal in." I cried reading that one, because she understood something my family never did. I wasn't building a restaurant. I was building the kind of home I never had. 2 weeks later, my entire family showed up at the restaurant. All together. My mother carrying lasagna like a peace offering. My father trying to look proud instead of desperate. Ezra standing awkwardly behind them. "We've been talking," Dad said carefully. "Maybe we could help with the business." I stared at him. For years, they laughed at this dream. Now they wanted a piece of it. Mom held out the dish. "Your favorite." I smiled faintly. "The one you used to make for Ezra's birthday parties?" Her expression fell instantly. Funny how memory works when accountability arrives. Ezra stepped forward with nervous energy. "Can't we just reset?" Reset. Like I was a machine instead of a person. I looked at all three of them standing there in uncomfortable silence, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel angry, just clear. "I don't hate you," I said softly, "but access to me is no longer automatic." Then I gently closed the door, not slammed, not dramatic, just closed, and behind it, I heard the lasagna dish quietly hit the porch steps. That night, after the restaurant closed, I sat alone at my favorite table by the window, one candle burning softly, one plate of untouched tiramisu in front of me. The city outside glowed gold beneath the streetlights, and for the first time in years, being alone didn't feel lonely, it felt peaceful. A week later, Ezra mailed me a letter, handwritten, simple. I underestimated you. We all did. I'm sorry. I folded it carefully and placed it inside my desk drawer beside my restaurant's opening night menu, not because everything was fixed, but because healing isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about finally being seen clearly. Months passed. The restaurant flourished. People came for the food, but many stayed for the feeling inside the space. Warmth, safety, belonging. One customer told me quietly before leaving, "This place feels like what family is supposed to feel like." I smiled for the rest of the night after hearing that, because she was right. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who celebrate your success without calculating what they can take from it. Sometimes it's the table you build yourself. And sometimes healing begins the moment you stop begging for a seat somewhere you were never appreciated. Late one evening, after locking up the restaurant, I stood outside beneath the cool night sky. The wind carried the faint scent of lemon and rosemary from the kitchen vents behind me. For a second, it reminded me of childhood dinners. But this time, the memory didn't hurt. It simply passed through me. I looked up at the stars, smiled softly, and whispered the truth I'd spent years learning. I was never too much. I was just giving myself to people who couldn't see my value. Then I walked home, not bitter, not broken, free.